Welcome to Northwest Arkansas Investing Podcast, your go-to source for real estate investing in Northwest Arkansas.
Whether you're a seasoned investor just starting out, we bring you expert insights, market trends, and practical strategies to help you build wealth through real estate.
From buying and selling to property management and long-term investment planning, we cover it all so you can make smart, informed decisions in this fast-growing market. Let's dive in. Welcome back to another episode of NWA Investing, where we dive into the minds of industry leaders shaping the real estate landscape here in Northwest Arkansas. We've got Mr. Dewitt Smith here with us. He's been in real estate for over 5 decades, right?
That would be true.
And that's awesome. And so we're pumped to get to just chat through, your story and deals you've done and what your businesses look like. And I've got Brian Wagers with me, of course. And Zach Stanley's out for a little bit, but we're kind of holding it down for a little bit. So, Mr. Dewitt, thanks for coming with us.
We appreciate it.
We're happy to have you, and we value your time a lot. So we're appreciative that you'd come on and chat with us. So we'd love to. Obviously, there's a lot to unpack here with a lot of what you've done in the commercial space, deals and management and things like that. But give us just a 30,000-foot view of your story, kind of where you're from, how you got started, what you've done, stuff like that. So
good. Well, I'm originally from Forest City, Arkansas, over in the Delta, and I went to school at the University of Arkansas. I was fortunate to back in the day to have a athletic scholarship. We went playing football there in the 60s.
it's awesome.
And was in engineering school. I was good in math and didn't know where I was going, so went to engineering school.
Mm-hmm.
Graduated in civil engineering and went to work with my cousin in Cincinnati for a year, and he was developing some apartments and I was doing some related things. And had an opportunity to go back to graduate school and get an MBA. And did that. Took 2 years. And went to work in South Florida for Arvida Corporation. And that was Arthur Vining Davis was this wealthy dude that bought up a bunch of land down there.
Uh-huh.
He owned like 100,000 acres in South Florida.
Oh, wow.
He also owned the Boca Raton Hotel and Club.
Good.
And so I worked with them for about 5 years, and then came back to South Florida. It was neat the first year when when in the wintertime you didn't have to put on a jacket.
Yeah.
But after you got, you like, if you grew up in a temperate climate, you kind of
The summers are tough up there. Yeah.
So came back and went to work with Fairfield Communities, and was at Fairfield Bay, Arkansas for a couple of years, and then went over to North Carolina. They had a near Cashiers, North Carolina, not Cashiers, everybody.
Cashiers. Yeah.
Cashiers, North Carolina, Fairfield Sapphire Valley, they call it.
Uh-huh.
And worked there. Came back to Arkansas and went to work with Cooper Communities that built Bella Vista, of course.
Yep.
And I was with them actually for 22 years. Went to South Carolina and headed up a development there called Fairfield. I'm sorry, called Lord, forget the name of the place now. But anyway, I was there for 10 years. Savannah Lakes Village was the name of that.
Yes.
And it was on the Savannah, a lake on the Savannah River there. And so I was there for about 10 years and came back with Cooper and then began running there. That was the Savannah Lakes Village was a Bella Vista-like retirement development.
Yeah.
Came back and headed up there, real estate, commercial real estate. Starting that, and we had they had some excess cash, and they invested a lot of it in commercial real estate, and we own properties across the Southeast and managed those properties. And I left them and started on, or Devereux was kind of hanging around as an investment arm, and I activated it, and we ended up buying, I and some partners, I was a general partner, bought Village on the Creeks in Rogers.
Pretty close to here in Pinnacle area, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And I've been operating with some form of that with some. Devereux has invested with partners in several other investments. We were part of a group in Little Rock called Cap Rock.
Okay.
And I was one of the general partners there. There were 2 Cap Rock funds, each of which had about $100 million in equity.
Cool.
And those funds are now, one of them is ended. The other is got kind of transitioned and got 4 buildings left that were sold to a different group.
Gotcha.
But then I've been working with partners here in Northwest Arkansas, and you may know Connor Eldridge and Steve Brooks, Eldridge and Brooks.
Mm-hmm.
They're partners, and then Tom Gordon, who actually is married to a Devereux. So
That's awesome.
Tom Gordon is president of Slim Chickens.
Oh yeah.
He and Greg Smart have been with us, and we've invested in several things here in Northwest Arkansas,
Amazing.
including we bought Village on the Creeks back from.
That's amazing.
So I've owned it twice.
Yeah. That's probably some of the most diverse experience we've had on the podcast, just getting into it. That's awesome. Well, so I'd love to dive in a little bit to what you kind of just mentioned there. So you University of Arkansas, right, originally? Right. In the 60s, that's a good time to play football for the Hogs, right?
We had a run there, yeah.
That's awesome. Some great teammates that are well known, and that's cool to see that you're a part of that.
Actually, Pat Morrison, who was an All-Southwest Conference tight end, and Chuck Dykes, who was All-American and played in the pros, are both. They have the real estate. They both still have their licenses and work with me on them.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's cool.
We were just talking about that on the last podcast, like whether to go to the debate on sending your kids to college nowadays or not. So we're having a Harvard MBA grad on our next episode. We should ask him his thoughts on that. But like you talk about how you're doing deals with people that you went to college with, and you still have a big smile on your face talking about guys you're still doing business with in school. So
I'm a big advocate of the advanced degrees, of getting a college degree and even beyond that if it suits.
Yeah.
But it's as much the experience as it is what you learn in the classroom.
Absolutely.
And so I think folks that miss out on, and college is not for everybody, and experience can be gained in other fashion as well. But I certainly, if you've got the capability, I would recommend to anybody that they
I love it.
Find a way to go.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned it sounded like your first job out of college, you went up to Cincinnati, right? And you started working on it.
That's where I was born and raised, Cincinnati.
I was there.
Cincinnati. Well, it was actually, we were in Fairfield. Right?
Fairfield, north. Yeah.
So it sounds like, fresh out of college, your first opportunity was in a real estate related field. Did your family have any real estate experience prior? Were you thinking about real estate before you were even decided on this job?
I just wandered through.
Yeah.
Didn't know where I was going. And my cousin he actually had also been to Harvard and gotten an MBA. And he was developing an apartment project, and he had a bunch of partners. So I was more on the construction side there.
Okay. Yep. And then kind of sometime in that experience, you mentioned you came back here to work with Cooper, who's kind of been, the originators of everything that's happened in Bella Vista and everything. What did that role look like? Just curious,
Well, I hired on with them actually to go start Savannah Lakes Village, the one in South Carolina.
Gotcha.
And so I was, I was only here for about 6 months before they completed that deal. It was interesting. It was for the first time, it was a joint venture with the state of South Carolina, and they actually funded the infrastructure. At that point, they had new regulations that required that in order to sell a lot, it had to be paved and services within a year. And so obviously Bella Vista didn't have that. And so that was the reason for partnering. And the state was interested because the particular county where this was about to go bankrupt, and they thought that, and it actually did stimulate.
That's crazy.
So
I love that. Yeah. So then, I guess, kind of leading up into where we are now. When did you start Devereux Management Company?
It's been around since about 84.
Okay.
So, but it really activated it in around 2000. I mean, in the form that it's now, around 2010.
Okay, 2010.
Bought Village on the Creeks.
Okay, got you. So that's Devereux Management Company is now how many employees?
We've only got 6 full-time employees.
Okay, 6 full-time employees, and then so what all does that? Is it property management? I assume maybe real estate holdings.
We do property management, and a lot of property management can be outsourced, contracted, but you have to have some good leadership.
Absolutely, yeah.
So it's property management and investment in form of limited partnerships, investing in purchasing properties with commercial properties. That has been our game with other capital coming from some limited partners.
Yep.
And then we have a brokerage arm that has been solely commercial, but we're now Bo Morrison, Pat's son, has come on with us, and we're expanding into some residential work as well.
That's awesome. So does that include development, or is it multifamily specific, or is there any?
We can do development, but 2 questions there.
Yeah.
We can do development, and we'll do build-to-suits. We have not done any recently. We've looked at just purchasing existing properties.
Yeah.
And the other part of that was
just multifamily. Yeah.
We joke around the real estate world is multifamily residential is exactly like commercial, only different. And when I was with Cooper, we own multifamily. We own apartments in Memphis and in Atlanta, and so I total about 1,800 units. So I have some experience over there.
That's awesome.
But it takes a different management game, and we are not currently organized to do that. We're commercial.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think a lot of it's interesting. We've had some other property managers come in and sit with us and chat, and most of them are specifically in the multifamily, smaller, larger property management game. And so I'd love to dive in a little bit more on what that management looks like and everything as we get going a little bit. But tell me, so Devereux, is it strictly Northwest Arkansas what you all have, or is it spread out? With you mentioned the South.
Yeah, I still have an ownership interest in some properties in South Carolina and actually Omaha and Kansas City.
Okay.
And we're looking. We're looking to. I'm actually part of what my work today is making an offer on a property in Greenville, South Carolina.
That's awesome.
Ironically, Social Security Administration, which has been Doge approved.
Yeah.
Nice.
And,
Pass that test.
That's
That
new.
works.
Yeah. Love it.
And so now we're just going to make an offer, and whoever owns it may like somebody else better.
Yeah.
It's always challenging to be able to get enough return to attract the investors,
Right.
yet get the deal.
Right.
So that's a single tenant. Is that?
It's a single tenant. Yeah.
Is that?
We prefer multi-tenant, but in this case, it's got a 5-year guaranteed, and then anything with the GSA, with the Government Services Administration, they'll have some outs if it doesn't get funded and blah blah blah, and they have those outs in the second. It's a 10-year lease, but second 5 years has those outs.
Yeah.
Do you go into that into like some of our investors, diving into deals, in that deal specifically, would you hold it for 5 years? Would you hold it for 10 years? Would you hold it forever? Or how do you look at that deal?
In that one, we always look at a 10-year.
10 years.
And can hold longer, although most investors want to turn at some point, of the passive investors. But so we always go where we plan for 10. We're opportunistic within that. And in this case, we if we get the deal, we would plan on them staying. They've been there for a long time, and we think they would stay and wouldn't leave and go somewhere, unless Social Security goes away, which I don't care what they say, it's not. That when you have less than 5 years left on a single tenant, the market tends to punish you a bit for the term of the lease. So if we were going to try to sell it, if we weren't going to go the 10, it's in a great location. So if they left, we'd have a good opportunity. But if we were going to try to sell it with them in place, we'd try to do it with some term left.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I'd love to dive into something that you mentioned there, kind of what your buy boxes look like over the years. You guys started in the 80s, maybe starting to purchase property and stuff like that. But what did it look like when you were first starting? What kind of property were you looking for then, and how has that kind of changed over the years?
Well, we inherited some. Cooper had already bought some apartments, so I inherited that back in at that period. But we were always focused on commercial. Office, which has taken lumps now, we see it recover. In Northwest Arkansas, there's 4% vacancy.
Yeah, crazy.
And we see it beginning to, those who preach the death of office because people could work from home. I can't remember which company today announced that everybody's coming back to the office because you get more done there.
Yeah.
The interaction.
Imagine that.
Imagine that. So, but we had focused more on office. We had done Village on the Creeks is primarily office, but it's mixed use. Has other
retail and everything.
Some retail in there, and some
yoga studios. There's
there's
business
restaurants.
We've got several restaurants, and so it's called mixed use. So we've done that. I'll kind of frame. There are two kinds of retail opportunities generally, and there's some blends, but big box centered, and that has the danger that we've all been looking at with big boxes going bankrupt.
Yeah.
And big boxes also have their lease and you're working for them rather than them leasing from you, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
The other is mom and pops. And with mom and pops, you kind of have to, and we do well with, I've done well in that arena because I understand that it's, I don't care how long you write the lease, it's month to month, mom and pop.
Yeah.
But there's some great tenants, and we were fortunate. We retained all but one of our small tenants there in Village on the Creek during the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And when it was really, because we stepped forward and gave them some free rent and said, we'll work with you if you'll lengthen your lease. And we worked that out, and they came back, and we only lost one.
Yeah.
And so it, believe it or not, when something is good for both parties, it's generally better.
Yeah.
Not a lot of the real estate world treats it that way.
Mm-hmm.
You want to dominate either as a landlord or you want to dominate like the big boxes as a tenant. But it really, if it works for both, it's better.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that people don't talk about super often is, when we're as investors, oftentimes people can just look at a spreadsheet and make decisions and think that everything just runs off of this pro forma or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's still a people business, and there's things that can happen that we don't plan for. You're out of pro forma for, and being able to work around and be nimble and things like that. I think that's really important to note for investors that are kind of thinking about this space that you're in. I think that's good. So it sounds like a lot of retail, some big box, and some smaller.
We've pretty much started one from big box.
Yeah. So strip centers, kind of, if you will, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Sounds like that's the bread and butter. I love that. What about, I'm just curious too on, obviously you guys have been at it for, let's see, 20, 40 years, I guess, or more, since Devereux has been around.
Yeah.
So obviously you've seen, so many different real estate cycles over the years. And so I'm curious, how has, when you have investors involved, how has the way that you look at deals changed or return expectations changed, I guess?
Generally speaking, passive investors are, God bless them, but they're excessively greedy. And they expect returns that are unachievable. And we try to be realistic and not show somebody returns that we know we're not going to achieve, and then 10 years later we don't achieve them and hope they forget. And that's tough. It's tough because sometimes there are more aggressive, players out there.
Yeah.
But the challenge is to get a relationship with an investor, and you want them to be a repeat investor. And so if you've been able to give them the distributions you said you were going to give them, distribution, incidentally, distributions, most investors are as much interested in the distribution as they are the overall return.
Yeah.
They want something, every year. And if you've been able to perform at and do what you said you were going to do, they are more likely to be up for a return investor.
Yeah.
I think that's interesting. It probably has evolved too. Like the investor expectations have grown, and like you said, they want higher returns, but at the same token, you want to be conservative in what you're projecting out and don't want to over project out, because then you don't hit your distributions and you don't earn their trust. Where, yeah, I could show you this number on paper, but that's not what I feel strong about. And yeah, maybe we did hit that from 2005 to 2019, but to be able to say we're going to do that again now is hard. And I think some of those investors got, we're hitting home runs, and it's hard to say you're going to keep hitting home runs.
Yeah.
Well, and the related point is there are, it's tough to find opportunities to buy existing commercial property that's leased right now.
Mm-hmm.
Because particularly if it has a loan that preceded 2020 at one of those 3.5 jobs, and we got one of those, so we like that. But the fact is the owners are living in denial that in today's world, if they had to sell, their property is worth less than it was back then.
Yeah.
As loans mature and as they have cash requirements, etc., they become more realistic. That's part of the cycle. I've been through a bunch of them.
Yeah, that's a great point, because I think most people, even owners of commercial property, would pay so much attention to the residential market, and that maybe affects kind of the way that they think about their commercial property, and the fact that, even as rates continue to climb, folks still need to buy and sell, and maybe there's a lot of people moving to the area, and so there's still demand, and so you see prices rising. But for commercial, I saw that especially in 23, I guess, as rates started to climb. There was a commercial property that I was after, and the owner essentially, and I showed it to him too, just as interest rates climbed so fast, he probably lost $500,000 to $1 million in equity, without anything changing for him, and so, yeah, I think that's wise, you mentioning that, because a lot of people, that's the hard part of navigating it today. You guys are in very similar fields where you have investors and your GPs and different, obviously different space. He's in the commercial multifamily. You're more in the commercial space like that. But I think that's just interesting to note. Do you have a thought on that?
Yeah, I did. And I think you saying it's harder to find deals, has that been part of your evolution to look outside of Northwest Arkansas? You're talking about deals in South Carolina and, some of these other projects.
And actually, I have relocated to South Carolina because my kids grew up over there while I was with Cooper.
Oh, yeah.
And I've got 5 grandchildren over there. So
that's amazing.
That makes sense.
We've relocated. My son is actually with our company, but he's an attorney there as well. But we're looking there, and it's tough there too.
Yeah.
Let me remind y'all, you young guys, rates are not high.
Yeah.
We got used to, we had, 12 years or 11 or 12 years of zero interest, and that's not normal.
Yeah.
You see the gray hair or white hair. I wish it were gray. And I once had a 16.25% home mortgage in 1980.
Mm-hmm.
So the rates are not high right now, but the world has not adjusted to these rates yet.
Yeah.
Given time, yeah, they will.
Yeah. Agreed. I think it's even starting to happen too. I think, commercial owners are coming back to earth, and, people even in the residential space are, they have to move because family's growing or whatever. And so, instead of waiting on rates to come back down to 4 or 5, they're realizing we need to move. And so we do it. I think that's a really interesting piece. Were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say, so is that a saying, if you had a crystal ball, you're saying that rates aren't here to stay. Rates are, you're probably looking at increased rates.
I'm not going to try to predict interest rates. I'd be wrong. But I will say that I'm not scared of the rates now once we're in adjustment.
Yeah.
And I've worked in environments where they were higher than they are now.
Yeah.
And things still work. Now, the anomaly was the 1980 deal. That's
Right.
that's a little bit out of whack. But fortunately, I sold that place and got. But yeah, I'm a long-term viewer and in all of my investments. So
Yeah.
I'm not betting against the USA in spite of all the mess that's going on right now. This too shall pass. It may take longer than I wish, but don't bet against the USA. And we will have opportunities along the way. You just have to take advantage.
Yeah, I think that's so important to kind of keep the view, especially as real estate investors, keeping the view of long term. I think it's so easy for our generations to, want to invest into things that can go higher quickly, and LPs are probably thinking the same thing. They're looking for, returns that are, high and they're soon, and in real estate, that's not the reality. And if you're playing the game to be in it long term, I think that's where you're really going to see the biggest wins in compounding, obviously. But I want to go to, obviously, you mentioned a lot of these different markets that you guys are in and stuff like that. What are some things that you guys look at when it comes to the market? What are you assessing? Is it, population increase? Is it, this and that? I'd love to just hear just high level what you guys are looking at.
Obviously, growth is important, but you look at the other. Is there an industrial base? If there's a university or college there, that's really good.
Yeah.
In fact, there's one banker's comment that he'd never made a bad loan in a university town. Which you can still do that, but that's the point, is that you look at those things. We've looked in Charleston, South Carolina. My daughter actually lives there. And Charleston has all of the food groups, except it's not the center of government. It's got three universities counting the med school. It's got tremendous history. It's got tremendous retirement and tremendous visitation, and it's got the port. Charleston is the deepest port on the East Coast. And so you've got all of that activity going on.
Yeah.
So why would you not look at that as a potential investment place? And I've had a place, one of my partnerships, we own the place in Charleston, so I'm familiar with it more than just casually through that.
Yeah.
It's funny you say that. It's because NWA checks all those, university, good industrial, diverse space, not just the Waltons, so it checks those boxes. But sometimes if you're in a specific niche, you do have to look at these other markets because there's only so many strip malls or retail centers you can call on in Northwest Arkansas. In my case, there was only so many apartment complexes that weren't owned by Lindsay in Northwest Arkansas. How do you see regarding market trends, interest rates? No one has a crystal ball, but what do you see Northwest Arkansas? People, it feels like we're in an insulated bubble. You've been here since the 1980. Has there been any? I've been here for 10, just over 10 years. When I first got here, people were like, "Hey, you should have seen the last 10 years," and then I saw these past 10 years. So it's like, we're in this bubble. How do you see some sort of correction in Northwest Arkansas? Is that something that you're tracking, or what?
The growth pattern, the growth for Northwest Arkansas is going to continue to be what it is for a long time. longer than I'll be around for. And so that's going to continue. Now, and we do have the diversity that you talked about. And, J.B. Hunt, Tyson, Walmart, and all of the tributaries of those. And the new starts now and the involvement of the university in some things. All of that is good. And if I did a study several years ago, and we are relative to Little Rock, which is the center of government, we had like 60%, 40% fewer. We had 60% of the attorneys per capita because we're still playing catch up. So if you scale that back because 10% have to deal with the government and stuff, still we're behind. If we stopped today, there'd still be moving in from attorneys, accountants, and others that are still catching up.
Yeah.
The thing that everybody knows about, but we don't have as much action on right now is infrastructure.
Totally.
And that's roads, water, sewer. Roads in particular, have y'all noticed how much challenging it is?
Yeah.
And we needed the Western Bypass 10 years ago. I don't know if it's ever going to happen. I've joked and said, hey, Jim, it'll only cost $3 billion, just build it,
Yeah.
You won't miss it. But that is a problem that needs to be addressed. And because it's got governmental involvement and, the Rogers, Bentonville, Springdale, and Fayetteville have learned better to get along with each other, but there's still some Friday night football going on.
For sure. Yeah.
And so, we've got to start acting more like a single urban entity than the individuals.
That makes sense because when we talk about and we listen to everything that's happens on the RVest Skyline reports and everything they're trying to do to keep the quality of life. They talk a lot about the quality of life and that goes into it, right? The infrastructure, how long you have to wait in traffic. Do people want to live in Fayetteville if they work at Walmart and continue to thrive if the traffic is so bad getting north? I don't know. And go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, and we have to understand that the two counties need to be taken as a whole, but there is no downtown Northwest Arkansas.
Yeah,
there's not going to be. We're going to be developments and activities off of the interstate.
Yeah,
and that's just the way it is. And we don't have and never will have mass transit in the sense of a centralized urban city.
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
We can get around a little bit, but nobody is going to take they were talking about putting a train, from Fayetteville to Bentonville.
Yeah.
Yeah, I said, it's going to stop at every, that's not happening.
Yeah.
People are not going to do that.
Right.
We're not trained to do
that.
And so we've got to make the cars work.
Yeah. And then you even mentioned sewer and the other consequences of huge growth. Like you're seeing stories coming out now about Centerton, knowing more development happening.
Right.
That could be a couple years before they can fix it too. And so how's that going to affect the rest of the area? And you may continue to see dominoes of no more new development in certain areas because they can't handle the growth. And so I think it's an interesting point that you're mentioning there for sure.
I didn't even see that about Centerton. They're like at capacity pretty much.
They're at capacity, no new development happening. From what I understand, it could take a couple years to fix too, which
I have some investment property in Centerton, so that's maybe not be a bad thing for my current investment.
You're already
Right, that would definitely 100%, and I think everything else will continue to be affected around it too. So
we talked a lot about a uniqueness about Northwest Arkansas, like how there'd never be. I think that's really interesting. There'd never be a downtown Northwest Arkansas. You know, we talk about all these new. Now there's a downtown Johnson. Springdale. Is evolved a lot the past 5 years. Really, their downtown is becoming cool. Each of these little. It's not just Fayetteville and Bentonville. Centerton wants a downtown. I hear.
Yeah,
they got some other fish to fry before that, but it seems these other areas want, and there isn't going to be. You have the Greenway, you can take a bike everywhere, and you have 71, but it's going to be interesting. The infrastructure, that's always like it's not, can we keep up with the population? These big drivers are going to keep people coming in, and then you have the other small companies that stem off from the big three. So I think that's we ask other, guests that are very involved in development in the area, and that it seems like infrastructure is kind of the first thought there that we need to be ahead of.
To your point, the smaller companies that are starting and growing, that's what really is going to be as much of a driver as the big guys, the big three, and really it's the I call it the big five. It's Walmart, J.B. Hunt, Tyson, University, and the medical community.
Yeah.
And those are the big five.
Yeah.
But aside from the big five, birthed by the big five, are so many opportunities that are supported by those things.
Yeah, absolutely.
That are going to be the drivers.
I saw it was really interesting to hear. Northwest Arkansas was like a top 15 tech area. Obviously you have Silicon Valley, which is number one, but just you have these tech companies that are servicing the vendors that are going into Walmart or servicing these other companies that are coming up.
It's cool to see. But DeWitt, I want to transition a little bit. I think a lot of our listeners love to hear about deals specifically and what those have looked like over the years for you. And there's hundreds of strategies out there, small multifamily, large multifamily for what Brian does, commercial space. What is, I guess, give me an idea of why someone would choose looking at strip centers and, these mixed use spaces like you guys do. Why is that a strategy you guys like over maybe other strategies out there?
Well, of course, we're broader into office and other things, but it comes down to location.
Mm-hmm.
Three most important things in real estate, not necessarily in that order. It comes down to location and understanding the position that particular property has with respect to what's around it.
Mm-hmm.
I'll use Village on the Creeks as an example. We are a B plus property in the way we scale that, because our rents are much lower than the new buildings. New buildings, you're pushing $40 a square foot for office buildings. We're at 25. So now, if you want a tall building, we're not a candidate.
Cool.
If you don't need a tall building, or you like being able to drive up, we've got more things than anybody else in that game, because we've got, for goodness sakes, we've got 4 restaurants, we've got all these different services, we've got a lake, we've got the trail goes right through us.
Mm-hmm.
We've got amenities that make us attractive.
Yeah.
And so the location and the competitive, is it competitive with others in its area?
Yeah. I think that's so, go ahead.
Yeah, it's super important. Yeah, location. It's like you can, I always compare it to like taking a plane off against the wind or with the wind. Like, if you're with the wind, it's a lot easier with a good location. And I think that's interesting about the competitive, like, can you be competitive to the people around you? And some people, I think it's tough finding that spot too, whether if you're buying the most might be nice to buy the most premium product in the area. You're the prettiest, you got all the bells and whistles, but at the same time, who's your competition?
Right.
Sometimes it's not good to be at the very top of the market too. And same token, there's a ton of value add up on this property, but at the end of the day, am I putting too much money into it? So I think knowing that competition is super key.
Yeah. Location, like you said, though, is unbelievably important. I mean, anybody who's not in real estate knows Village on the Creeks because they drive by it every day, and it's right there in front of your face. And where people gather, I think is, it's hard to see a scenario where a property like Village of the Creeks, it goes down in value because it's irreplaceable real estate, right? I mean, it's right the prime middle of town, right off of I-49. So it makes sense. I think that's an interesting thing for investors to think about. So
Yeah.
Congrats on that spot. That's interesting how you bought it, sold it. Then you came back.
Dive into that a little bit. So how did the acquisition of Village on the Creeks first happen, and then kind of what that looked like?
Well, the acquisition originally, it was defaulting on loans.
This 08, 09?
Then Arvest owned it.
Things can default in Northwest Arkansas? I didn't know that.
Arvest owned it. And so we said, hey, this location looks pretty good. So I put together a group, and which included Ms. Hunt, was one of our the single largest investor.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I had met her and had a relationship because I was working for as a representative of the court when Swihart and Miss Hunt were getting sideways and on a bunch of commercial properties, and so that's how we had met. So we were able, and I think we were aided by the fact that some folks, one from Little Rock and one from somewhere else, had made an egregiously low offer, which made our offer look better. and they took it, and we were able to get it financed and were able to run with it. Subsequently, we contributed it with the approval of all of our partners to one of the Caprock groups, and Caprock 2. And that's at the time we actually doubled our equity when we did that. Caprock owned it for a while, and they had a suitor come by and make an offer on it, and they accepted the offer, and then the guy canceled. And so I got with my partners and I said, hey, I'll get a group and match that offer if y'all are agreeable because of the conflict here.
Mm-hmm.
They said, yeah, if you can match that, we're good. So we did. And that's how we ended up owning it again. A different ownership group.
That's amazing. Did it feel like when you bought it the first time around, did you feel like you were getting it at a steep discount? Or
I was afraid for a while I'd paid too much.
Yeah.
It was about 68% occupied at the time, and we were able to get it leased up pretty quickly, and that eased my pain a little bit.
Absolutely. I love that. I'd love to. We've got about 10 minutes left. I want to dig into a couple more deals that you're proud of over your tenure of doing this. Tell me maybe your favorite deal, and how that came about, what it looked like, maybe how you acquired it, and maybe any kind of financing too. Would love to just get a story on that.
I'll give you one that when I was with Cooper, we bought an office building in East Memphis. Memphis, in downtown Memphis, is not a place you necessarily want to go. But East Memphis was okay. And we bought it, and we're doing very well with it. And along comes this was in about 2000-ish. I can't remember, maybe a little north of that. And in the Middle East, there's a bunch of disruption, and that's when somebody was lobbing scuds into Israel. And there was this group of Israeli money that wanted to get out of Israel and get it invested. And they paid us a premium. We made about, and we'd owned it for about 5 years, and we bought it for $38 million, sold it for $65 million.
Wow.
And subsequently, they sold it for $50 million. So, we
What years was this also?
this was in 2000, 2006.
Okay. Yeah.
2005, somewhere in that
Yeah.
early 2000 period. And that was not something we sought, but it came to our door. Sometimes you don't have to go looking, you just have to open the door.
Yeah.
You've had a lot of great timing on some of these deals. What would you contribute that, knowing your numbers, luck, God's blessing? What would you?
I tell you, I do believe in God, but He's not out there helping me. Things.
Yeah.
He's given me, the ability to discern.
Mm-hmm.
But timing is always some luck involved because you cannot predict the cycles.
Yeah.
Which means you always want to have the ability to endure the cycle. That's what if you are not capitalized to weather a cycle, then you can really get damaged.
Yeah.
And you don't like the cycle, but if you get through it, you can avoid those kind of cataclysmic.
Yeah.
I think there is a little bit of science to it, maybe, experience. And experience comes, remember, I've made this in like a joke, but it's not really. I said I've lived long enough that I've made all the mistakes once. I just try not to make them twice. The same kind of mistake.
Yeah.
And you learn from those. So there is an experience factor that factors in over a lifetime.
Did you feel like when, with your experience of your first job out of college and things like that, that gave you the confidence to kind of start eventually putting these investment groups together and things like that?
I had I would say, that, particularly the one in South Florida, which we were, I can tell you some stories about that. It was interesting.
Yeah.
And so when the longer that you have, and probably as much as I've moved, the variety of experiences has done me a good service, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Having those experiences to help you figure out what you need to weather the storm, and then if you can weather the storm, you can be prepared for good timing too, I think is a lot of value. Absolutely. What I just heard.
I alluded to this earlier, but one of the key mistakes that some investors make in commercial properties is not being properly capitalized.
Yeah.
And having some downturn occur and they can't weather it and then they get hurt.
Yeah. Speaking on that, give us your worst deal that you ever did, or and what that looked like. You may not even have one of these, do it?
I probably do. I think probably the worst one is we bought a property in Kansas City, which we still the partners still own. And we bought it from the bank. And I did not read and understand the ramifications of the lease well enough. And it was a company, it was multi-tenant, but the largest tenant had some lease elements that made it very awkward. And we're going to end up, we still own it, but we're going to end up probably losing money.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Just buying it too high to where this lease that was in place was too?
The lease, it was a lease problem. And as it turned out, that particular market, this is in Kansas, is not as dynamic as we had anticipated.
Yeah.
I just flipped. There is one property that the best case, that I gave you a good case, but here's really the best case. This was in Columbia, South Carolina, and it was owned by a real estate investment trust, and they had been told that they needed to divest of their South Carolina property. It was publicly traded by some dude, in New York. And they had to get it done before the end of the first quarter. And we had cash, and we were equipped to do that. And we bought a 9-story building for like $30 a square foot. And my partner said, "Well, DeWitt, don't you want to analyze this?" I said, "No, I just want to buy it."
Yeah.
And we ended up making a fortune on that building.
Yeah. How long was that hold?
We held it, I think about 6 years.
6 years. Okay. And what does financing typically look like on a size building like that? I mean, just generally.
Well, it depends on what cycle you're in, and it depends on where you go. If you can always get longer term loans in the insurance carrier, and they've got some interesting things that they do that make it fun. Banks generally will not go that long.
Yeah.
And you can get fixed rates for that long in insurance world. Because their spread is against a 10-year treasury.
Yeah.
They're looking longer. Banks, it's shorter, and so you can get a 5 or sometimes you can get a 7-year fix, but 5 is the standard.
Okay.
And but the bank rates were so much better during the teens, because the short-term rates were 0, the 10-year rate was still something. Some of the spreads were a lot better, and banks gave better loans.
Gotcha.
And then they've moved back from that a little bit now.
Yeah.
Pandemic and stuff.
Right. Yeah. I love that.
This part of capitalizing. I mean, I think it's about having the right reserves. So putting the right debt on it is a huge piece too.
Yeah. Almost as important as the deals sometimes.
Yeah.
Having the right debt.
And remember that appropriate amount of debt is attractive.
And I think it depends on the cycle. So you were saying
the denominator effect, meaning you have less equity, so your returns, if the cost of the debt is not excessive, you have positive leverage. But that can turn on you if the rates go up or if you have too much debt.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people that play with a lot more debt than I'm willing to play with.
Yeah.
I've got a conservative approach there.
Absolutely.
Is your house paid off or no?
Well, it would be, except I had a guy come by with I'd already bought it with 2.25% more.
You can't say no to
Yeah,
that.
I said 15-year mortgage, and I said, okay, I got to figure I can make a spread on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. We're just as we wrap up, Dewitt, I want to just hit on this question before we go, and what advice would you have for young folks looking to get into the space that you're in? Looking at larger commercial deals that maybe they're not these smaller mom and pop deals, but can get into this prime real estate. So what advice would you have somebody kind of getting started and looking to make a move there?
I would tell them, if you are willing to take the time and train up a little bit, and don't think you're going to be the boss the first day or the second year or the third year, and I think it would be attractive to go with a larger company, and get experience before you launch out.
Yep.
And which means you have to have some patience, and you have to believe that there's gold at the end of that rainbow, and opportunities will present themselves later on.
I love it. Yeah, that's so good. I think being able to, I think we always talk about it, but being able to see long term with real estate, and then just kind of focus on the day to day, I think is unbelievably important. But we've loved kind of getting to dive into your experience, and you've got so much of it in so many different areas, and hearing about deals you've done, and just kind of the approach that you take. And so we're super thankful to have you on. Brian, do you have anything else?
Yeah, I appreciate it. That was a great listen. I mean, there's a lot of different parts of this podcast you could rewind and listen to a couple times. So yeah, we definitely appreciate the value you've given us today.
Well, thank you all for the opportunity. It's been nice.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Well, we appreciate you, and we're looking forward to talking to you soon.
Mm-hmm.
Again, thank you guys for tuning in. I'm going to go ahead and list some sponsors off here. We're going to start with Flat Branch Mortgage, specifically Colton Kennedy. Colton and I personally do business together, and he's a wonderful lender here in the Northwest Arkansas corridor. Want to invest in real estate or purchase a home, but feel like you need a secret decoder ring to understand the process? You're not alone. First-time investors, house hackers, and future homeowners, Colton Kennedy has you covered. Colton Kennedy with Flat Branch Home Loans helps people like you break into the real estate market without the guesswork. Think of him as your mortgage strategist, helping you turn "I wish I could" into "I just did." You bring the vision, he'll bring the lending game plan. Let's make your first investment a smart one. Colton Kennedy with Flat Branch Home Loans. Contact him today by calling 417-437-0086 or emailing C as in cat, K as in Kimberly, ENNEDY at Flat Branch Home Loans. That's FBHL.com. That's 417-437-0086 or emailing CKENNEDY at FBHL.com. Thank you so much, Colton. So our next sponsorship is 1440 Photography. 1440 Photography is a local company here. I love getting local companies to sponsor this podcast. They're local, they do great service, and personally I can speak that they do a great job on mine and my clients' stuff. If you're an investor or agent in Northwest Arkansas, you need 1440 Real Estate Media in your corner. They're not just photographers, they're real estate market experts, and it's the only thing they do. MLS photos, drone, video, Matterport, whatever your listing needs, they've got it. Everything is a la carte, and it's totally customizable. And here's the best part. Just book online whenever works for you. They confirm and show up ready to go. Fast, easy, done. Where quality meets speed. Book now at 1440photography.com. Our next sponsor is Advantage Title and Escrow. They're a local company. They do great work. Specifically, Kayla Phillips. I can speak personally on this sponsor because I use Kayla for all of my transactions. It's been 2, 3, 4 years now, and Kayla and I have done a ton of deals. We probably do between 65 to 80 deals a year together, and they do a great job. The SOPs, so systems and processing that they have over Advantage Title, is just incredible. Clients love it. They do a great job from start to end communicating. When I give a deal to Advantage Title and Escrow, I know that it's going to be taken care of. There's no second guessing. I almost am able to treat them like a second transaction coordinator to my transaction coordinator that I already have. I know that they're going to handle the systems and processes correctly. As an agent, as a homeowner, as a buyer or seller, they do an incredible job of handling a transaction and communicating throughout the process. They do a great job with communication, especially Kayla Phillips over there. I would highly encourage you, if you're looking to close on a home, buy a home, if you're an agent listening, to use Advantage Title and Escrow, specifically Kayla Phillips. So you're going to reach Kayla best at 501-358-1601, or you can email her, Kayla, Cayla, at goadvantagetitle.com. Advantage is ADVANTAGE title.com. Our next sponsor is TDS IT. That's T as in Tim, D as in document, S as in solution, I as in information, T as in technology. This one hits personal. It's close to home. My dad, Tim Stanley, runs TDS IT, and he decided to sponsor our podcast. So I can speak from personal experience. I've been able to work for my dad in the past as well. And they're a great solution for business technology. If you're a local business owner or even out of state, if you're running a business, need printers, need information IT services, if you need phones, scanners, printers, all the way up to, you're printing books to, hey, we just need something in the office. TDS IT is that spot. They provide the best in-brand business technology with proven, best in local service, and they can prove it. Our next sponsor is from Winstone Private Lending. This episode is brought to you by Winstone Private Lending, one of the top private and hard money lenders now serving Northwest Arkansas. Whether you need short-term capital for a flip, a bridge loan, or creative financing, they've got you covered with very flexible products to fit nearly any deal, including 100% financing. What sets them apart is their deep expertise, fast response times, and ability to think outside of the box to help investors like us close quickly and efficiently. If you're looking for a real lending partner, check out Winstone Private Lending. Link is in the show notes.
Special thanks to one of our sponsors who I've worked with personally on multifamily commercial loans as well as business acquisitions. People's Bank works with entrepreneurs, investors, deal makers, and risk takers. They're the ones who see opportunities where others see obstacles. Whether it's a vacant lot with a plan for a thriving business or making an old space new, they work with creators who think big and are not satisfied with the status quo. People's Bank helps you build Arkansas deal by deal and brick by brick. They don't just see numbers on a spreadsheet. They see your passion and vision. People's Bank. It's where people come first. Member FDIC. If you're needing loan assistance, reach out to Dakota at 870-883-1706 or DHEDDEN at peoplesbankar.com.
If you enjoyed the show, make sure to give us a follow on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an update.
Don't forget to connect with us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn for more real estate insights and behind-the-scenes content.
Have a question you want us to cover? Send it our way. And if you're interested in sponsoring the show, visit nwainvesting.com to get in touch. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.